What is generational wealth? Can you even do it through property? And what are some of the key considerations? My name's Dr. Rob. I've been teaching people property now for some 20 years. And I'll tell you, this is one of the big questions. People who are building a portfolio, building a property business, or wanting to and have kids, maybe even grandchildren, and realize that through their lives, no one ever gave them any wealth. They didn't inherit anything. They had to start and build from scratch, but they want to leave something for their kids. If you want an answer to that, just watch me for the next 4.5 minutes and I will go through that with you. So let's address the first question, which is what is generational wealth? Let me pull up this on the screen actually for you so you can have the answer to the first one. Okay, so generational wealth. As it shows here in the image, generational wealth is you handing over the keys to whatever it is, your vault, if you like, for your family. So in the event of your death, if you're in a job, typically in a job, and you work all your life, you haven't bought any assets, you pass away even before you finish your career, or you pass away as you get into retirement, there is no real generational wealth for your children. You might own a property, maybe a home, for example, and depending on the value of the house, there may be inheritance tax to pay and a whole bunch of other things. And potentially at the end of that, after paying off the inheritance tax and maybe selling off some of the things that you own, your kids might be left with 20, 30, 40, 50,000 pounds. That's cash. And to some extent, there is a measure of wealth in that. If they have nothing, then that increases their level of wealth. But what I'm talking about here is generational wealth that produces an ongoing income, a passive income that your family can inherit, such that when they're 30, 40, 50 years of age and you pass away, that income becomes theirs. It could be passed on through a limited company, it could be put into a trust. There's many tax efficient things that can be done here, but that's for advice from a tax advisor, not myself. But I just want to give you the principle. So that also, of course, includes the asset wealth of the portfolio. It might be in the event of your death that you had insurance, so that clears off the mortgages, and the portfolio is worth £2.5–3 million. And so there's not just a passive income of maybe £3,000, £4,000, £5,000 a month, depending on the size of the portfolio, but also there's this wealth now that your children have access to, and they might want to sell some of this off and take that wealth and use it into something else. It could be wealth in the form of precious jewels. It could be that you've traded the stock market and you own stocks or assets there. The point here is generational wealth is something that in the event of your death, there's a continued two things: asset value with net worth associated with it, and an ongoing income. So the next question is, can it be done with property? And actually, that's a great question. And I've been asked that a few times over the years because people aren't quite clear on this. So I've put it on the screen here. I might just move off to the left just so I'm there. You can see me looking up there. So essentially, yes, it can be passed on through property. I would say that your goal here is to purchase properties that provide this ongoing monthly passive income. You can buy a £350,000, £400,000 house in the south of England that barely produces a cash flow because the rent minus the mortgage just does not produce enough of a deficit. You go into the Midlands or higher into the north of England, you'll buy a cheaper property that will produce an ongoing passive income, and you've paid less for it. So your generational wealth could be a combination of both. You might have some properties in the south of England, for example, that are higher value, that go up in capital growth and year on year create a greater capital gain, whereas you might have some northern properties or Scotland or possibly in South Wales where the ongoing capital growth is lower, but the massive benefit is the passive income. And your family may inherit both a combination of both passive income and a capital growth strategy that you have in place. Again, that's something when I'm teaching a property course, we talk through this basic structure with people. And then the last question is, what are some of the considerations? Which is actually a very good question as well. So what are some of the considerations? It all sounds too good to be true, Dr. O. And it takes work, it takes effort, it takes education, it takes an investment in you, and then an investment into building this portfolio. But even if you build it, what are the considerations? In the event of your death, who's going to look after these assets? If you've been running it and manage it up until now, do your kids want to even do that? They may not want to. So you have to think about, if I build I built a large portfolio to start with, but I actually downsized the volume of the properties in that portfolio because I had a thought about my children and do they want to manage that many properties? So that's another consideration. Do you have any kids? If you do they want to even manage them? Or if they do want to manage them, that's great. Do you want them to be part of the business? Or if they're too young, how are you going to pass on that ongoing wealth to them? What's the structure you've got in place? Do you have, is your estate entrusted to somebody? Do you want to put it into a trust where it bleeds out a certain amount of money to your kids every single month? These are other considerations. And of course, how are you going to protect those assets so that no one can come after them? So what's the key structure to have in place such that no one can take your properties away from you? Have you got your power of attorneys in place, all of those type of things, your will. There's lots of things to consider there. So hopefully that's useful and you found that valuable. Certainly consider the key things that I've just mentioned to you, and I'll see you on my next post. Remember to follow me on YouTube, subscribe, like, comment on the posts. Always useful. Dr. O signing out.